preview of this ramp with all the timber taken out. This 2x4 is already cut to the exact length to lock it into that position to create the top step for the ramp. Building it so you can deconstruct it later. Exactly level. An inside wall of timber. Once we pour the concrete, put a line here. Having light steel.
Close the door and leave the light on. The morning light should be coming soon. Kick off your shoes and leave the winter and the pain it brings to you. Lay your head upon my shoulder. Shut off your thoughts and clear your mind.
I just wanted to show you a preview of this ramp with all the timber taken out of this formwork. It came out really nice, and you can see this is where our ramp goes on this angle. The formwork we're going to build in this episode is what creates this concrete wall system for our ramp. We can see how the concrete foundation sits on top of the dirt step that we excavated in the last episode. And the concrete block was part of this platform system and just a quicker way to get things to the right height without having to build another form. We're going to start our process by setting the edge of the top step and work our way down from there. This 2x4 is already cut to the exact length we want the width of this staircase to be, so we just have to remove a little dirt to fit it in snugly.
I offer peace and understanding for the things that you seek to find.
Once we have our piece roughly in the ground, we just double check it with our tape measure and level to make sure it's in exactly the right spot before we put some stakes in.
Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains? Are you strong enough to break these chains?
Once we're satisfied it's in the right position and square to our retaining wall over on the fence line, we put a stake in to lock it into that position. With the stakes locking the 2x4 in the right position, we just make a few adjustments with our packers to get it at the right height.
Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow. Nobody feels the pain.
Once our 2x4 is set to the right level on top of the packers, we just tap the stake down flush to the top of the 2x4. We just lock this 2x4 to the stake with a screw so it won't move. We just do one last double check with our square to make sure everything's going to come out plumb.
Shut off your thoughts and clear your mind.
We've pre-assembled a piece of the wall form here that's going to create the step that sits on top of the original concrete we poured for the whole wall. We set this in place and then continue to join timbers on it to create the top step for the ramp.
Nobody feels the pain. Nobody knows.
We always double check to make sure it's level. We're slowly building out this formwork. It's kind of complicated and hard to explain, but with formwork you've just got to experiment and try things out. Building it so you can deconstruct it later easily without damaging your concrete. So sometimes you do some strange kind of configurations of where you put screws in and joining two bits of wood together so they can break out later. Let this rain pass over and we'll come back later. It's pretty nasty conditions today. Squally rain and wind. Winter's definitely here. But we'll continue on with our formwork.
Are you strong enough to break these chains? Are you strong enough to break these chains?
Here I'm setting a 2x4 that will be part of the top of the step system, so it's critical we get it exactly level. I use a pencil mark to make sure it doesn't move too much from when I lock it in with a screw.
For the things that you seek to find, nobody knows as the rivers flow.
To make sense of what I'm doing, I've created an inside wall of timber for the concrete. We have our outside perimeter. And now I'm going to fill in various pieces to create the stepping, because we have a height to come up. It'll make more sense as we go along. I'm installing the last major piece of this formwork, which is the sloped piece of timber that will help form the ramp on the outside of this walkway.
Nobody knows as down the rivers flow. Nobody feels the pain. Nobody knows as down the rivers flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains? Are you strong enough to break these chains?
Now that the formwork is complete, I just double check over everything to make sure I've got enough strength to hold the concrete in the right place when we pour it. Once we pour the concrete and rip it out, it'll all make sense. So this formwork is going to incorporate the ramp for the outside edge, and it also incorporates the continuation of the step that we started with our previous concrete pour. The step that's poured on top of the existing foundation we already poured with our wall ties into this upper threshold where the ramp starts from the patio flat area above. Now that the top half of this formwork is complete, I'm going to take a break and enjoy these beautiful horses that live in the paddock just below where I'm working. Advantages about working in the countryside is the beautiful scenery and animals that are constantly around me. And I often just take a break to enjoy my natural surroundings.
Nobody knows as down the rivers flow. Nobody feels the pain. Nobody knows as down the rivers flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains? Are you strong enough to break these chains? Lay your head upon my shoulder. Shut off your thoughts.
Our next stage is going to be to build some forms for this lower part of the ramp on the outside of the wall. So that way when we pour concrete, we can pour concrete in the entire system. We've copied the angle we established on the upper slope into the lower slope area down here. Put a line here that matches the ramp on the other side over here. Here we're just test fitting this piece that's going to create the lower ramp angle. Once we're satisfied it's going to fit properly, we're going to lock it into the top piece.
Nobody knows as down the rivers flow.
This is a good example of how we build formwork to come apart easily later once the concrete's been poured. I'm just using this small piece to join these two 2x4s together, and it'll come out easier after the concrete's hardened.
Are you strong enough to break these chains?
This 2x4 is going to create the slope for the concrete wall we're going to be pouring. We're just locking this angled 2x4 into our treated timber pine wall so the concrete won't push it out when we pour it in. The last thing we need to do is to add this plywood, which will create the wall when we pour the concrete.
Nobody feels the pain. Nobody knows.
I'm using my tape measure to establish where to put the screws in for the greatest strength.
Are you strong enough to break these chains?
We're adding a lot of screws into this part of the structure because the concrete can be quite heavy and we don't want it to blow out. We just take one last look round our formwork and make sure everything's in place, because now we're ready to add a bit of reinforcement steel.
Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow.
Here you can see that I've added screws into the treated timber retaining wall as a way to lock it into the concrete once it's poured.
How to stem the river's flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains?
We're going to be using a medium strength mesh for our reinforcement steel for this concrete form. Bolt cutters work really well for cutting this kind of mesh instead of having to use our grinder.
And clear your mind. I offer peace and understanding for the things that you seek to find.
As we finish up today's task for getting this formwork ready for concrete, I can reflect on a good day's work. The weather was a little tricky, but we soldiered on.
Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains?
I'm just using my foot here to keep the mesh off the ground so the bolt cutters can cut it properly. Once our mesh is cut to size, we just install it inside our form voids. Adding reinforcement steel in your concrete is critical for its strength. We've already added a lot of heavy steel into the key parts of this foundation, so here we're just adding light steel.
Are you strong enough to break these chains?
Now that all the timber work is complete for this formwork, and we've installed all the reinforcement steel, it's ready for concrete, which we'll be covering in the next episode.
Understanding for the things that you seek to find. Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow. Nobody feels the pain. Nobody knows how to stem the river's flow. Are you strong enough to break these chains? Are you strong enough to break these chains?
Thanks for joining me this week on my YouTube channel. Check the link below, and while you're at it, hit the subscribe button or make a comment so I can help you with your future construction solutions. And don't forget to follow our channel for more ideas and how-to tips for home and garden projects.